I had a case where a man was killed on the highway in a dust storm when he was hit by two separate semis, and the whole event was actually caused by negligent farming practices. Extremely tragic story. We were fortunate enough to be able to help the family of two accident victims actually that were killed at that accident. It was in western Kansas, as you said. There was a dust storm out on a rural highway in western Kansas. Our client, one of our clients, was transporting a van with, or he was driving a van with oxygen tanks, and that was his job, is to transport oxygen tanks. He came upon what looked like several vehicles stopped in front of him, but again, the wind was blowing. It was very dusty in this area, particularly up ahead of him. So he slowed down, completely stopped. It was stopped on the highway. As he was sitting there, more dust began to blow, and the whole area just became overwhelmed with dust. It was a zero visibility situation. And what happened was he was struck from behind by a semi-truck that drove into the dust storm. It flipped his vehicle around, and then he was hit again by a second semi-truck that did the same thing. It was just following the other semi-truck. He was killed upon the second impact. There was also another semi-driver that we represented, him and his family, in the same accident. He was up ahead a little bit, also got killed in the same collision. And what ended up being determined was that there was a number of passenger vehicles and then three semis up ahead of them that drove into the dust storm. And it was an area that one particular section of land that had not been farmed properly. In western Kansas, they use a berm method because the soil's very dry. When it gets windy, they have to berm the soil correctly so that it doesn't blow and create a zero visibility situation. So several passenger vehicles drove into it. There was a head-on collision up ahead, which caused multiple vehicle crashes up ahead, right behind the passenger vehicles. And it created an entire chain reaction effect where our client came upon what had already been 3 or 4 collisions. He stopped, and then he was struck from behind. What this case allowed us to do, though, was to use the law in Kansas on comparative fault, because the law says if in any accident there's more than one person that's at fault, you can actually make a claim with all of them for their percentage of the fault. So in any one accident, there's 100% total fault, and then that fault gets a portion to each person that's involved. So we were able to make claims with the passenger vehicles, insurance companies, also the 3 semi-trucks up ahead, and then there was also a claim against the farm and ranch policy for the farmer that didn't follow the established farming practices. In total, between the 2 clients, we were actually able to recover over $4 million, when essentially all the insurance that there was. There was one insurance company that didn't pay, and we actually took them to trial in the case. And our client's story was able to be heard. But it was a very unfortunate case. Thankfully, the law has allowed us to be able to make multiple claims and able to make somewhat of a substantial recovery for the families. He had a son and a daughter and a wife at the time. And we were able to make a recovery that would go to a conservatorship for the benefit of the children. There is no formula on the value of life or the value of quality of life. If somebody's injured, they lose quality of life. If somebody's killed, they lose their life. We all know that's priceless. And thankfully, the law doesn't say, well, your life is worth only X amount, or here's a formula as to how much your life is worth. So what that leaves us with as the attorneys is advocating for the high value of that quality of life or that lost life. And what I like to point out to juries, if I'm arguing this to a jury or to an insurance company or some kind of a decision maker that's making a decision as to what the value of the case is, I like to look at things in life that are considered priceless. What we do with those things when we have to ascribe a value is we ascribe a high value. And the law only leaves us with one remedy, and it's money. Money will never bring somebody back. It will never undo what's happened to somebody. But the idea is it's a useful tool. And if it helps somebody in their life, it's far better than them receiving nothing. So it leaves us with the question, well, then how much is it worth? And again, there's no formula, thankfully. But what we've been able to successfully argue is it should be a very high value. If you have to put a number to it, and that's what the law says we have to do, cheap justice is no justice. And it should be a very high number to represent what was lost. There's nothing more valuable to us than our well-being, our ability to do things. Lost time and inconvenience and pain and suffering and all those things that come with injuries or death. So if we have to ascribe some value, again, to our time that was lost even, or our inconvenience or what we go through, then it should be a high number.